Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's NCARB Live on the AXP. During our time today, you're going to hear from two of our Architectural Experience Program experts, Martin Smith and Melissa Gobrecht. Martin and Melissa have prepared a presentation to walk you through the AXP and to call out some important resources that will help you as you gain experience and navigate this program. And then they'll answer any questions you have about the AXP during the Q&A portion at the end. So before we get started, Martin and Melissa, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and your role here at NCARB? Sorry, Melissa, you could go first.
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Gobrecht. I am an architect licensed in Pennsylvania. I have about 13 years of practice to my resume, residential work, some multifamily, and some work down at the Smithsonian and Architect of the Capitol. So exciting stuff here in Washington, D.C. And I've been with NCARB now for about 1.5 years. I am one of the managers in the Policy and International Relations Department, and I support all things AXP and licensing advisors and manage the AXP portfolio program. Martin, go ahead.
Thanks, Melissa. It's my pleasure. I'm Martin Smith. I'm Assistant Vice President, Policy and International Relations at NCARB. I've been with NCARB for about 15 years to help develop a lot of our outreach to universities, AIA components, licensure candidates, architects. I also helped develop our architect licensing advisor community, as well as work with our volunteers who help develop a lot of our programs, especially around the AXP and experience. I am an architect licensed in the state of New York. Prior to joining NCARB, I did work for architecture firms in the New York City area. And with that, I'll pass it to Jenny.
All right, thank you both so much for being here today. So we're gonna start with a presentation. I think, Martin, you're going to slide share, so we can go ahead and jump into that, and then we'll start the Q&A. You can feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A at any time, and we'll answer them as we can.
Thanks, Jen. So it is great. Melissa and I are really excited to share some of the top tips we have about your journey through completing AXP specifically, but a little bit broader than that. And for one thing, we did when we were deciding to develop this session, we wanted to break it to sort of 3 categories. This is category A, right when you're starting experience, maybe while you're still in school, trying to figure out those next steps. But also maybe you just graduated, trying to go, hey, what do I need to do? What should I be thinking about when I engage in AXP? Then the middle section is, hey, you're about halfway through the experience. What should I be thinking about? What should I be focusing on? What are some expectations I should be having at this point in my process? And then finally, near the end, you're close. I'm almost there, near the goalpost. And you're trying to figure out, well, how should I be thinking about things? What are ways to sort of expand? So now, even though we broke it into those 3 areas, we do view a lot of these tips can happen at any point along this path. And it's good for you all to be aware of that as we go through this. So with that, I'm going to start out with tips to start AXP. Well, you'll hear this a lot from NCARB. Always go to the guidelines, review the latest document, go through and read the sections. You're not probably going to read this through detail, each part in detail. However, it's good to become familiar where information is so that if you do engage in something or you go, hey, I'm doing this experience, I think I've read something in the guidelines, you can go further and look at the further details to really make sure what you're doing qualifies for AXP. But there are a couple areas I want to bring your attention to, and that is the experience areas. There are 6 experience areas. Each area is a different aspect of architecture, and there are tasks associated to each of those areas. These are the 96 tasks that you should be able to competently perform at the end of AXP. When you look at each area, there's a description at the top, gives you a little overview, and then the detailed tasks below. You sort of look at these together. A lot of times the tasks may be broad, but if you look at it in reference to its area, it helps you understand what should I be doing. And if you're not certain, start these conversations with your supervisor as you're engaging in these things. The next thing are, how do I gain experience? A lot of you want to figure out, like, hey, what do I need to do? Yes, most of us know we need to work for an architect or architecture firm for a certain amount of experience to finish AXP, but most people do all of their experience working in this experience setting A experience. There are other opportunities. We're going to touch some of them throughout this session. However, when you're looking at this, this is page 16 in the AXP guidelines. You get a brief overview there, but then go into more details as you look further into the document. These are things you can gain outside the working in an architecture firm. Now, one thing keep in mind is that for experience to qualify, it needs to be gained after high school. However, you are not limited. There's no reason to start AXP until you have that. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a second. So getting those first experiences, you're like, okay, well, I'm first coming out of school or about to graduate. How do I get those first things? NCARB does have a lot of great resources to help you on this. We have videos, career tips, interviewing, understanding, listening from the actual people who do the hiring in firms. This is a great video right here at NCARB Live, Architecture Career Tips. Also, we do have a blog post related to this. So always look up career tips, how to get started at a job. There's also our Architect Spotlight series talking about people's different experiences as they have these working in firms and opportunities that arise. Now, the big thing is your interview questions. Keep in mind, whenever you're interviewing with a firm, you should be asking them almost as many questions as they're asking you, because you are trying to understand, is this firm the right fit for you when you are seeking those jobs? And we do have a lot of great suggestions of questions. You can see some of them listed here. But again, we do also have these through blog posts on our website as you're navigating this. Now, as I mentioned, you are able to start counting experience once you're outside of high school. However, does that mean you start your AXP while you're still in school or while you just graduated from high school? No, you should not be starting your AXP until you have something to count. Should the first be able to count your experience for AXP, you do need to start your NCARB record. You just go to our website, click this login, establish record, fill out a bunch of information, pay a fee. Fees are listed on our website. And then it'll allow you to start submitting experience at that point. So this is something important because you can't count experience, can't be testing unless you have an active NCARB record in the process. Now, another big thing is to get started is we want you to have conversations with your supervisor. This is very important in a lot of this path. And we do provide a lot of resources for you and your supervisor to help navigate AXP, along with expectations of you and your supervisor. What training courses your supervisor could be taking if this is something new to them. And maybe you just watch the training courses as well, because hey, you might learn something about what your supervisor is doing when they're reviewing your reports. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these resources as we go through this program as well. So now brings me to tips for the middle. You're about halfway done AXP, where you're like going, hey, I've gotten some experience under my belt. What should I be thinking now? Well, just like I was saying in previous conversations, engagement, talk to your supervisor. You're not going to hear us, Melissa and I, say this enough throughout this whole session, because while you're going through AXP, you're going to get out as much of this as you put into it, and you use this tool to navigate to ultimately be able to independently practice architecture. So your supervisor is your resource. Now, in most cases, you're probably having regular conversations with them on your work, on red lines, on things that you're being asked to update on your drawings. But then on top of that, you should be going, hey, I see these areas of AXP I haven't gotten any experience in, or I don't feel that much confidence in. When will I get these opportunities? When will I start to navigate those? And the more you engage your supervisor earlier, the better chance you have of your experience continuing and progressing so that you can finish AXP. Now, there is a requirement to submit experience in a timely manner. This is the reporting requirement. You do need to submit experience within 8 months and up to 5 years back for 50% credit. Now, this is important. The reason you want to be submitting experience earlier and often is that is about having conversations with your supervisor and engaging them and getting that stuff started earlier. Because if you work somewhere for 4 or 5 years and all of a sudden you decide, well, I'm just going to submit all my experience at once, you might have been missing something, might not have been getting certain opportunities. The earlier you start these processes with your supervisor, the better chance you have of getting a full experience and getting exposed to all the competencies necessary to complete AXP.
All right, thank you, Martin. So for our second tip, we wanted to suggest if you aren't having those regular conversations with your supervisor, if you're not getting regular interaction with them, consider setting up scheduled meetings for like 15 to 30 minutes every month or two for the purpose of planning out your AXP. You can download and use this licensure progress worksheet that NCARB has created to help you get organized as you set your intent for these conversations. And also regularly assess if you are getting the support that you need to gain those competencies for AXP. Ask yourself, is your supervisor open to meeting with you and able to align the work of the firm with your goals? Or if they can't align the work, are they looking for alternate ways to help you gain those competencies? Last resort, ask yourself, is it worth looking into employment at another firm where you can meet these goals? So licensing advisors are NCARB volunteers and AIA component appointees that can act as coaches, mentors, and career advocates for your path to licensure. Look them up on our website and reach out to build that connection. Other resources that you can use to get connected are to subscribe to the NCARB blog and the ARE 5.0 community for more updates on programs and answers to questions that you may have that some other candidates are already asking. So we're going to move on to tips to help you complete AXP. Say you're at the end here and you've got a few more experiences or tasks that you haven't completed yet. So we're going to give you some suggestions for that as well. As you near the end of AXP, look back over the tasks listed in the guidelines and ask yourself if you have confidently gained competency in those tasks. Are there tasks that you haven't completed yet? Do you need to speak with your supervisor or mentor about a plan to develop those competencies? So have those regular conversations with your supervisor so that you can wrap up some of those final tasks. From page 16 of the AXP guidelines, you can see other experience opportunities. Martin covered some of this earlier. You can click on the links of this page. Next slide, Martin. We're missing a slide here of our page 16. I think it was an animation maybe. So from the page 16 of the AXP guidelines, you can look into work under other licensed professionals, or consider exploring work through some self-directed learning, such as the NCARB Professional Conduct Series, up to 10 hours, or AIA continuing ed courses for health, safety, welfare credits. And you can report up to 20 hours of those per the 6 experience areas of AXP. There's also the option to do site visit with a mentor or another architect you may know through hard hat tours from your local AIA or NOMA chapters. And lastly, did you gain 2 years of qualifying AXP experience over 5 years ago and not report it? If you are not planning to return to an architecture firm or haven't worked at one for more than 5 years, but want to get licensed, AXP Portfolio may be for you. This is a program by which candidates upload 96 documents demonstrating their competencies gained in AXP. Their AXP Portfolio supervisor reviews the documents for demonstration of those competencies. Completion of this program is widely accepted with other jurisdictions and is completion of AXP and takes about 7 months for people to complete. Anyone interested in this program should first speak with their state licensing board about acceptance of the program, as the board may have additional requirements. So that wraps it up for our top tips. I hope you find these helpful. Martin, do you have anything else you want to add? No. I'd say as a final point to consider, and a key takeaway, make sure that you are having these conversations on the regular with your supervisor and meeting with them about all of the tasks that you need to complete, that you hope to complete, and that you're gaining those competencies and reporting them as soon as you gain them.
Okay, great. Thank you both so much for that. We're going to go ahead and move into the Q&A portion of our webinar. So remember, you can ask your questions anytime via the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen, and we are going to focus primarily on AXP related questions today. So our first question, does freelance work qualify for the AXP?
I'll go ahead and take this one. Yes, it does. So freelance work is a little tricky in that you have to make sure that you are not the owner of the contract, that you're not compromising that supervisor relationship. So long as you are contracted to the licensed professional under their contract or independently contracted to the owner, then you can report that experience to the licensed professional, and they are your supervisor on that experience report.
Let me just add a little bit there. So what Melissa's hitting on is that the supervisor needs to meet the requirements of direct supervision. And that is where the supervisor needs to be at the same level or above you in their role in the project and your engagement in that project. And think of it as they're the ones who you're basically sending the drawings to and getting reviewed from. And that, if that is happening, then it does qualify for AXP in those situations.
Yeah, they need to be in responsible control of the work.
And if that supervisor was an architect licensed in the US and you're working with an architecture firm, can you report that under setting A or is it setting O?
Yeah, that would be setting A.
All right, a related question, who counts as an AXP supervisor?
So that depends on the work experience setting. So if it is an architect within a firm lawfully practicing architecture, then that would be setting A experience, and that would be your AXP supervisor. Or it could be another licensed professional under the setting O other opportunities. And that could be a landscape architect, civil engineer, MEP engineer. It's all listed there in that setting O other licensed professional opportunities. In the case of your reporting experience under design or construction related employment, it would be your supervisor who oversaw your work while you were employed in that setting. Martin, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Okay,
Oh.
next.
Great. Our next question is, how can I ask my firm to help me find an AXP supervisor?
Well, I'll start with this one. So a lot of times, if you're working at a firm, your supervisor is going to be identified. And in many cases, it'll be the person you're working directly with on a regular basis. But there are going to be times that you might be working at a firm that you might work on projects across the firm, and you might have one person who's identified as your supervisor. In any instance, good thing to do in your interviews is ask, hey, who's going to be my AXP supervisor when I'm working here? Are they in this room with me doing this interview? And if not, when will I get the opportunity to meet them before selecting the job? That is always a good thing to ask. When you are working in the firm, and if you didn't do that during the interview process, when you are in the firm, first talk to your supervisor, the person you are directly reporting to, say, hey, are you the person I'm going to be submitting all my reports to? Because sometimes that may not be the person, and talk with the firm. Now, hopefully you'll always have AXP supervisors who support you on the path. If you ever run into issues, chat with them, talk with them. And if you are still continuing to have issues with your supervisor, which is a lot of our data shows that there's a small subset of people that have major issues with their supervisors. Most supervisors support candidates on their path to licensure. But if you do run into that situation, make sure you chat with other people in the office or the HR department if they have one, depending upon the size of the firm, to find out, hey, how do I get my support? And then if you're still not getting it, go back to what Melissa said earlier. Maybe it's a good time to find a job somewhere else where they are going to support you on that path. And that was a lot broader answer to that question, Jenny, but hope that helps.
Great. Okay, so our next question is, I have over 20 years of experience under 2 supervisors and mentors. How can I document that experience toward the AXP?
Well, I'll go ahead and take a stab at that one. I'd say if it's recent experience, you can report back the last 5 years by reporting hours. Some people aren't aware of that. So if it is recent and you have had those general experiences and completed those tasks of the AXP in the last 5 years, you can report that experience by reporting hours in about 3 experience reports. Secondly, if you can't, but for instance, maybe a supervisor, one of those supervisors has passed and some of that experience can't be verified anymore, you can apply to the AXP portfolio program. And you can do that by going to our website and applying through our link and completing the CV, and we'll review that application.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, does getting an MArch degree decrease the amount of experience hours required for licensure? And more opinion-based, perhaps, do you think getting a master's is beneficial?
So I'll start with this one. To ultimately become licensed in a state, you need to meet their education, experience, and examination requirements. So AXP is a portion of that in most states and jurisdictions. And even if it's not necessarily a requirement, they do accept it towards completing their experience requirements. So if you do not have that degree from an app program, that's the 5-year BARC traditionally, the MARC degree, or the DARC, if you're in University of Hawaii, then in many states, it's just a matter of completing AXP and taking the test and passing the test to become licensed with some additional things here and there. But I'm just being very brief on that. But if you do not have that degree from that program and you're pursuing licensure in one of our 17 jurisdictions that have the additional paths, you're going to need to typically do some additional experience. And that's not always directly related to AXP. That's sort of what Melissa was saying earlier, that sometimes there are some things you need to document for a state beyond AXP. And that's where you have to ultimately talk to the state. So where's the benefit there? I go getting the degree from that program expedites a lot of processes, makes things simpler in some cases. However, it's not always an option. So that's the nice thing is you do have additional paths and ways to ultimately become licensed as well as NCARB certified. So always look at what makes sense for where you are in your career, where you are in your path, and what opportunities you have available at that moment. And if you can become licensed, get licensed. If you have NCARB certified, get certified, and then I'll allow you to get licenses in other places.
Great. Our next question is, I'm a foreign architect path candidate. How can I record the experience I gained in my home country?
So it's my understanding that once you pay the fee for the foreign architect path, your reporting requirement timeline is waived. So from then you can report experience that you gained more than 5 years ago in a foreign country. And that can fall under the setting O category, work under other licensed professionals. So if you are working under a licensed architect in a foreign country that is licensed in that country, you can report that experience. You do have to also complete half of your AXP though, working in the setting A experience setting. So that's something to keep in mind. So 1,860 hours of your AXP still needs to be completed in the setting A category.
Just to add, experience gained outside of US or Canada needs to be working for a firm engaged in the lawful practice of architecture, whatever it means in that country. And depending upon who your supervisor is, determines if it goes into A or O. Melissa shared the O one, which is a traditional one because most people, their supervisor is licensed outside of US or Canada. But if your supervisor is licensed in US or Canada, it is experience setting A because it meets the requirements of you're working for an organization engaged in the lawful practice of architecture and you're supervised by a US or Canadian architect who's actively licensed at the point that you gained that experience.
Thank you. Does attending local AIA chapter events such as design tours or construction tours and receiving mentorship from architects count toward the AXP? And if so, what experience setting would that fall under?
So those were some of that I listed on that slide toward I think the tips to wrap up your AXP. They are other opportunities. So if you look at page 16 of the AXP guidelines, you'll see how to categorize them when you go to upload and report credits for doing those activities. The hard hat tour with AIA would likely be site visit with a mentor because you are doing a site tour with an architect that can approve that hour or however many credits for your site visit that you attended. I forget the other part of that question.
I think you covered both parts.
Okay.
Okay. Does research work done within a firm count toward the AXP? For example, researching how to use new software like Autodesk Insight or new sustainability solutions.
Well, my quick response to anything, I'm working in a firm, does this qualify for AXP? A, talk to your supervisor. Again, Melissa and I are going to repeat this probably a few more times throughout the session. Talk to your supervisor. They're the ones who are ultimately know the competencies, know the tasks, know what it means to perform them, and can help you determine if it qualifies. This is one thing we didn't mention in here. Not every hour spent working in an office, working anything, directly relates to qualifying for AXP. Because there are going to be times that you're doing things that don't directly relate to AXP. And those may be great experiences, maybe things you need to do for your office. But AXP is about developing the competency to practice architecture. And these are, so it's not a timesheet exercise of dropping your timesheet exactly into AXP as it shows up there. So if you are being honest and going through the process to really help you develop your competency, please be aware of that when you're going through this process. And it is okay to have a week where only half of your experience qualify because the other half was doing things not at all related to the practice of architecture. And that's okay.
Okay. I submitted a Setting O AXP report for a competition, which I participated in last May. However, the mentor didn't reply to the AXP request from NCARB. What should I do? Should I put in another architect's name?
Martin, would you take this one?
Can do. So this does happen. First of all, I always say, talk to the person again, have the conversation. A lot of times the tools are great to make things happen quickly, but they're not a way to supplement conversations. Ask them, hey, did you get the email? Because sometimes those emails end up in spam folders or junk files or quarantine. If they haven't gotten the email, check to make sure you type the email in correctly, that you have all that in, because the user error happens sometimes. And third, before you ever submit experience, it's always good to talk to your supervisor first to find out what email should I be using as I send reports to you. Because sometimes they may use a different email for their NCARB record from the email that you're familiar with. And that way, if you get it into the correct email, then they can easily find the reports, even if they do not get the email. Now, let's say you just did all that and they're still non-responsive, still having issues. The first thing is if they are your supervisor, they are the ones that are supposed to be approving experience because they have knowledge of the work you're doing. And if you are at a firm that has multiple architects who could serve in that role, talk to the firm and say, hey, this is issue. How do we get this resolved? And the firm should help you. But if they're the only architect in the office, you're going to have to figure out how to work that out with them in most cases. And in some states, this is where you, depending upon what state you're in, there may be some things, rules in their requirements that do say, hey, architects who are acting in a supervisor role should be approving experience in a timely manner. And this is part of NCARB. So the last place to go in that is talk to your state and then contact NCARB. If you just did everything I said and they're still resisting approving your experience, engage us. We're here to help. We have information on our website with regards to this under whistleblower and things like that, or just talk to our customer service directly and they can help coach you on next steps. And another little help, because I always get, it's always sad when I hear people get in that really bad situation, is talk to your local architect licensing advisor. Melissa mentioned that as well. That's another great local resource. Sometimes when you get two architects talking together, they may be able to help solve that problem without having to go through all this stuff. But we do know there are sometimes bad situations, and we do the best we can to try to not make sure that happens. So yes, Jenny.
Thank you. Do you have any tips for earning experience for someone who's pursuing NCARB's education alternative route to certification?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. Do you have any tips for earning experience for someone using the education alternative route? So
Okay.
I assume that's somebody who's trying to earn additional
2 times AXP.
So depending upon your degree and what you qualify for certification, first off, while you're working towards licensure, make sure you talk to your state to find out what the requirements are above and beyond standard, whatever education you have, AXP and ARE, so that you're making sure you are in the proper experience opportunities to fulfill those additional years of experience that a lot of states have. So that's my first advice. If you're working for an architect in an architecture firm that's lawfully practicing, you're probably meeting most of those states' requirements. If you're not doing that, some states do have certain allowances for other types of experiences. So that's your first step. While you're going through the process, if you have that 4-year degree, which has a significant amount of coursework in architecture, you can have look at our guidelines on our website, and there are ways that you can get that checked out to see, once we have transcripts on file, to see if you ultimately would be 2 times AXP potentially or not, that you can be documenting AXP and going above and beyond the standard rules. So that's another thing you can do as well, is continue documenting AXP if you qualify for that path. Now, if you're not certain, it's okay. You don't need to do it at that point. When you do become eligible for that path and eligible for 2 times AXP, you can document all past experience to ultimately meet the 2 times AXP requirement at the point that you're eligible for it. So that's where I go. It depends on where you're at, how certain you are, as well as what feedback you get from us. But the most important thing is meet whatever the requirements are to get your first license, because that is going to be your first goal while you're going through the process.
All right, here's a pretty straightforward one. Can you have multiple supervisors if you've worked for multiple firms?
Yes. Just to have those conversations first, let them know talk to the person you're planning to send that experience report to that's been supervising your work, and let them know to be on the lookout for the email notifying them that they have an experience report to approve.
And as far as I know,
Just to add a little bit to that, Jenny, is that sort of for NCARB and AXP, there are no minimum requirements. So those reports could have 2 hours in them because you did 2 hours for that person. That's okay. But then when you get back to some state requirements, again, always check to see if any states have any things that may be of issue. But we have no limits on that end, on our end.
And as far as I know, we don't have any limits on the number of AXP supervisors you can have either.
The only limits are what you can rationally do in a day and a week. And that's based upon the conglomeration of all the reports and time frame.
Yes, you can't report more hours than there are in the day. All right, some questions about the AXP portfolio. First of all, can you just talk a little bit more about what the portfolio process is like?
So you apply by letting us know your work history and what those work experience settings have been. So we need to know that at a minimum, you have 1 year of setting A experience that's older than 5 years. And the other year because you need 2 years of qualifying experience, the other year can be a combination of setting O experiences, but in most cases with people, it's both years are setting A. And then from there, we invite you to move forward with the process if you qualify, and you report your work history on your record as a duration report, and your AXP supervisor is well, they also come, you inform us who your AXP supervisor is with your initial application. And this is somebody that you have either worked for 6 months, if you're coming back to an architecture firm, or it's someone an architect that you have known for more than a year, that you would have previously worked for. So you inform us of who you would intend to have act as your AXP supervisor. And then we bring them into that process. They have to do a training that qualifies for a half hour of health, safety, welfare credit. And then they approve your work experience, duration reports only, not AXP hours. It's just a verification of employment history for our records. And then once all of those items have been complete, supervisor training and the duration reports, work history reporting, we can move you on to opening up this portal whereby you have a conversation with your AXP supervisor about what demonstrates competency and how you would demonstrate these competencies, these 96 tasks, and what documents you think you have that could validate that you have this experience. And you upload your documents in, and your supervisor can review them and talk to you about, maybe they're looking for something different, maybe they accept it and then they approve it. And once all items have been approved, you are AXP complete through the AXP portfolio.
And a follow-up question, are there examples of AXP portfolio submissions that people can look at online?
No, we don't presently have that. We
There
do?
are. There are.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks.
Yes, there is if you go to AXP portfolio, there is a list of suggested documents. Now, this is one thing to keep in mind, as Melissa said, it is ultimately a conversation with you and your portfolio supervisor. You're going to share documents you've created or connected to creating, and you have your supervisor say, yep, that's good. Nope, nope, not good. You should have those conversations. But we do have recommendations if you're having difficulty find. Our volunteers put together a list of them. They're not required. It's not required to have all of those, but it is a way if you're having trouble trying to figure out something that would count there.
Great. All right, I know you touched on this a little bit during the presentation, Martin, but at what point can candidates start earning experience? Do they have to finish their degree program first?
No, they can start counting experience that qualifies for AXP as long as it's gained after completing high school or a recognized equivalent.
And that doesn't matter if you have a NAB accredited degree or not. Like, you can report any and all experience at any time after high school.
All right. Can you report AXP hours that were earned in a different state than the one that you're seeking your initial license from?
Yes. I don't think that needs much more. You do have to be careful though, as each state has a different, may have differing understandings of what is lawful employment or lawful practice of architecture if it's setting A. So we know for sure that in the state of New York, you have to work, in order to qualify for setting A experience, the firm itself has to have a business license to practice architecture as well.
And anything we say about state requirements, always go to state to verify them. Caveat, anything we share are things we've heard and understand. The other thing I wanted to add is that this gets to sort of, Jenny, a sort of side conversation about, does remote work qualify for AXP? Yes, it does. It does not matter where the location are. You could be working in the US and the firm could be in another country. You submit it based upon the rules of the requirements. So if you're working in the US, but the firm is in another country, you're actually owe other experience under licensed professional if it's not a US or Canadian architect who's your supervisor. So these are things to keep in mind. It's not ultimately where you're located, it's where the practice is happening, where the work is happening that needs to meet the requirements of AXP.
Great. All right, we received a couple questions on this topic. So if you have reported the maximum number of hours in one of the experience areas, say 320 hours for construction evaluation, is there any way you can continue reporting experience under that same area and still count it towards your AXP total?
No, unfortunately, no, but you can keep reporting it, but it doesn't help you to wrap up your AXP.
The system will actually stop you when you hit the
Okay.
caps, and you're not actually able to submit any additional hours in that category once you're done. And speaking of the other experience under licensed professional, you'll see there are multiple things that qualify. But if you worked for an engineer for 1860 hours, and then you go work for an architect in another country, you can't do more than 1860 hours. You've capped that area out. The basic concept there is that they sort of view that these experiences are good and helpful, but they're sort of determined, hey, this is what our volunteers found would be acceptable for these things that are not working for an architect or architecture firm, and the amount that they felt comfortable counting towards that requirement. Knowing that no matter what, you have to do at least a minimum of 1,860 hours working for an architect or architecture firm that's lawfully practicing in that experience setting A opportunity.
All right. So can work done under the supervision of an engineer or a landscape architect count towards AXP under setting O?
Yes, it's that subsetting called work under another licensed professional.
Great. I have over 12 years of experience since I opened my NCARB record, but I never started recording hours. What do you recommend I do?
Well, it depends on what you've been doing within the last 5 years. So if you have been employed with the same firm and all of your recent work has covered all of those 96 tasks of the AXP, then you can back report your experience with 3 simple reports. You report back the last 8 months in 2 different reports for full credit. And then you report all of your time from the 8-month mark from today to the 5 years, 5 years from today mark in one big bulk report with all of your other experience. And so long as your supervisor is in agreement with those experience reports, you could be AXP complete. If you have not had a very diverse last 5 years of work experience and you've been more senior in your firm, then I would advise you to apply for the AXP portfolio.
Can you record hours for competitions that you participate in as a student?
Martin, do you want to go ahead with this one?
Sure. This is a little bit more nuanced. So yes, for it to qualify for design competitions do qualify for AXP. However, because you said you're a student, it depends upon was the design competition part of a class. If it was part of your studio work, things you're doing for the school academic credit, then no, it doesn't qualify for AXP. If it was stuff done outside of school, in your free time, or something you did with your AIS membership, and you did a design competition with a group of people that weren't related to your class, then you could count it towards AXP. Do keep in mind you do need to have a mentor, and a mentor is someone who has an active license to practice architecture, who has knowledge of the work that you did on that design competition to be able to prove your experience. And you will submit that experience at the point that you've submitted and documented it, sent in the final work for the design competition. Now, with regards to that, we're talking there a little, the nuance there is experience that counts for AXP and is a requirement for a class only counts towards AXP if it's a paid experience, like working for a firm, working for an engineer or landscape architecture, doing things that are work related. If it's not work related, if it is a requirement for a class, you cannot use it for AXP. So site visits, if your class goes on a trip to visit a building under construction and it's for your class, that doesn't count as site visit mentor, it's towards your class. This is the one place that we still have some separation between the education and experience requirements.
Okay. Next question is, I currently work at an interior design firm. Can my AXP supervisor be someone from outside of my firm?
You want to go, Melissa?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and let you take this one, Martin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're working in interior design. Now, the nice part is some of that experience will qualify for AXP depending upon who your supervisor is and who the people are that are in that firm. If they are just an interior design firm and have no architects on staff or engineers on staff, then that would fall under design or construction related employment. You can get up to 320 hours. Now, getting back to sort of that comment about who can be your AXP supervisor, it needs to be the person who has control and knowledge of that work that you're doing in that firm. And it's traditionally someone working in that firm, an organization that you are working for. There are contractual things that do happen that sometimes people can still be in that role. But when you run into those situations, give our customer service a call. They can help navigate that with you. But in most cases, it's usually the person you're working for. You just can't have an architect outside the firm to say, oh, yeah, I'll be your supervisor. I'll approve those experiences for you. That doesn't meet the requirements of AXP.
Okay, great. Does the process of reviewing and approving experience reports work the same for architects who are US architects versus architects who are licensed internationally?
So what I'm hearing is when somebody is documenting AXP as a US architect or an architect outside the US who's on the foreign architect path to certification. Do the reports look the same? I go, yes. They look the same as candidates. The only difference is for architects and architects on the foreign architect path, because they're in our system as architects, because they're licensed outside the US or Canada. They aren't subject to the reporting requirements. So the big difference there is they could do a report that's 7, 8 years old, and it'll count 100% towards AXP because they're using it to document stuff they've done in the past because they're already licensed in our system. Does that answer what you think, Jenny?
Yes, I think so. And does NCARB need any like work documentation, authorization to work type of certification for candidates who are reporting their experience hours?
No, we do not have that. We do in the guidelines, and as people are approving and saying, hey, I'm doing this process, you are saying you're doing things ethically and within the responsible things. So whatever is legally required to do things, it is good to have that legality taken care of because we are a profession of ethical and responsible practitioners. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is that what was I going to say? Some states may have some requirements, so you're going to want to make sure if you're ultimately going to get a license in that state that you're meeting their requirements and work requirements that they may have if there are any issues there. And I have heard that some states may have like citizenship rules and things, but I don't know offhand. The ones I've only heard are the ones say, hey, we have no citizenship requirements for licensure in our state. That's why I go, always check with the state because sometimes there are rules you want to make sure you're not missing or misrepresenting yourself.
Okay. Earlier, you all mentioned taking NCARB CE courses or AIA CE courses as a way to gain additional experience hours. How do candidates log those hours?
So as I understand it, they are reported through their experience portal, and NCARB reviews to approve them.
And they will need to upload a PDF copy of the transcripts from AIA. So that's when you go, if you have to have an AIA membership. If you are a student, if you join AIS, you get access to transcripts, contact AIA. They will help you understand how to get your transcripts activated. Once you are no longer in school, AIA does provide a 1.5 year free membership in most chapters and components. That will give you free access to transcripts 1.5 years out of school, and then you have to pay whatever the costs are to continue being a member. But when you go to continuing ed courses, you have to give them your number, your AIA number, or AIS number if you're in that level. And then when the organization records that into the AIA system, it'll show up on your transcripts, and that's what you send. We cannot accept certificates from candidates directly. It has to come from the official transcript printout from the AIA website and be uploaded along with a list of all the courses that you're counting and which areas you're putting those courses into.
And Martin, our the NCARB Professional Conduct Series is available through their account already, correct?
Yep. So that is a great course that you all can take to learn about professional requirements of practicing architecture. It's up to 10 hours. Once you take the CE course, which is free to all licensure candidates, then you can go and the hours will automatically show up in practice management, depending upon which ones you complete and however many you complete.
Okay. Under the setting O opportunities that are supervised by a mentor, does the mentor have to be licensed in the United States or Canada, or could they be licensed somewhere else?
They do need to be licensed in the US or Canada, correct? Yeah.
All right. Next question. Can I report unpaid overtime work if my position is salaried for 40 hours a week?
So basics are, when you are creating reports, we do ask you, what are your average hours worked per week? Actually put in the actual hours worked per week. So if you are putting in 50, 60 hours a week on average, so if you're putting in a month-long block, look at how many weeks. Oh, that week I did 40 hours, that week I did 60. and back and forth, then you put, I worked on average 50 hours per week. That is okay. Then when you're going to submit stuff, still only put in experience that you're gaining towards developing the competency of the tasks. Especially when you start working a lot of extra hours, a lot of times they're really focused on a few things and just getting things done. So that's something to keep in mind. Yes, this is not a race to ultimately get AXP checkbox done as quickly as possible. It is about how do I develop competency in the 96 tasks. And if you sit there and put all the hours in for one task that you're working on for 70 hours, is that helpful if there are 20 other tasks that you need to get done and you're almost done that area? This is something to keep in mind when you're having those conversations with your supervisor. What does qualify? How do I get this program done? How do I get developing competency in all the 96 tasks?
I know we've talked about a lot of setting O opportunities today, but can you all recap basically what all opportunities there are under AXP setting O?
Oh my goodness. I have that slide. I don't know if I should share it. There's a bunch of them. There's the work experience under other licensed professionals, construction work, designer construction related employment. You do have to be careful reporting these because some of them they have a cap of 320 hours, which at full-time experience might only be like 2 months of employment. You've got the AIA health, safety, welfare credits, professional conduct series, the certifications for the spec writer. Just a whole bunch of them. Page 16 of the AXP guidelines.
It was kind of like a pop quiz.
Yeah. Maybe I got like 10 of them in there. I don't know.
You got most of them, I think. Yes, you
Okay.
can find them all in the AXP guidelines.
There you go. And what's great about this page is when you click into that blue link, it gives you all the it takes you to the page for more information about that experience setting.
And that's very important because when you go there, it sort of talks about what sort of qualifies, how much qualifies, where it goes, what are the expectations of this experience, and how do you document that experience depending upon what type of experience it is. So this gives you a good overview in reading that detail. And if something's not clear, our customer service is there to help you out with that.
Yep.
Great. All right, we have 2 more good questions, I think, before we head into our wrap up today, since we're getting close to time. First, is it expected that you get experience in each of the 96 tasks to complete the AXP?
Yes. That is what the ultimate goal is here. Our volunteers and leadership have evaluated all of these tasks that you should be able to confidently, competently be able to execute once you are licensed. So yes.
Great. And then a more nebulous one, which is, do you have any tips for building a good relationship with your supervisor and getting hours approved in a timely fashion?
I'd like to say if you feel like your supervisor needs some guidance on how to be a good AXP supervisor, we have some training videos available for them that qualify for health, safety, welfare credits that they can also report for their continuing ed requirements. They talk about holistically what does make a good AXP supervisor, how to have those conversations with your staff, your direct the people that you are managing, and how they can best look out for you to have a good AXP experience. So there's also the licensing or the supervisor AXP expectation worksheet that we showed you earlier that can help them stay a little more focused and list out the expectations that they should also have of you as the licensure candidate. And always have those conversations with them. If you are not getting that regular engagement, set up a calendar appointment for every month or 2 to have those quick conversations with them about what you have been able to complete, where you would like to go next with your AXP, and how they can be looking out for you as you gain those competencies.
And just to add a little there, our data shows that on average, supervisors approve reports within 2 days. Is that still, I believe that's still accurate. And does that mean that all should be approved in 2 days? No, because sometimes it might take a little longer for that supervisor to review. But in most cases, your supervisor should be very aware of the things you're doing, and it should be pretty straightforward for them to approve experience. If there are delays, a lot of times some of those delays may just be they didn't get the email or see it. So check in with them, ask a question. And then also, if you are running into an issue where the supervisor is just not at all, we talked about it earlier, some actions you have available, but always start with the conversation to better understand where things are at and check the emails to make sure they're properly inputted into the system.
Okay, great. So before we close up today, can each of you share one key takeaway that you really want our viewers to go away from today's webinar with? And Melissa, we'll start with you.
Well, I already gave mine because I didn't realize it came at the end here. So sorry about that. But my key takeaway would be to you to make sure that you're being present with your AXP, reporting as you gain that experience, so that you know what you've completed, so that you are in regular conversations with your AXP supervisor, and that you are working toward completing those goals, so that you're not just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So that would be my guidance.
For me, the big thing is I like to always say, AXP is good as you make it out to be for you. The more you put into this, the more you try to get the experiences you need, the more it helps you. This is your tool, your guidebook to ultimately be able to practice architecture. So if you look at it as like, just checking boxes, putting hours as quickly as possible, are you really going to get that full experience? But if you look at it as, oh, I have all these tasks I need to develop, and I'm going to try to get as much opportunities to get exposure to them and feel confident in them, then you're going to get more out of this program. The big thing to keep in mind is that when you do finish AXP and the state gets your report saying, hey, you finished AXP, you've done ARE, and you have whatever education or whatever additional things you need to do to become licensed, they're going to go, oh, this person is saying they're competent in all the 96 tasks. And that is up to you to determine your comfort level with misrepresenting where you're at. So that is something to keep in mind. It is, even though it is a guide and a tool to help support you, you're going to get out of it as much as you put into it and you expect out of this program.
Okay, great. Thank you, Martin and Melissa, for all of your expertise today. And thank you to all of our viewers for joining us. We hope we were able to answer your questions. I know there were a lot. So if we didn't get to your question, feel free to reach out to us at our customer relations team at www.ncarb.org/contact, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you couldn't catch all of today's webinar, we'll have a recording up soon on our YouTube channel. And if you want to stay in the loop on all of our updates for our programs and our new resources, follow us on social media at NCARB and subscribe to our emails at www.ncarb.org/subscribe. Thank you all so much for joining us and have a great rest of your afternoon.